Good afternoon and welcome to this press conference which corresponds to the film Bertolari, which has just been projected and screened in the official section of the San Sebastian International Film Festival. As I was saying, we're going to commence the press conference which corresponds to the film Bertolari of the official section of the 59th San Sebastian Film Festival. The idea is to present a film. We have the director, Asier Altuna, and the Bertolaris that we see, Mayana Lujambio, Mel Sanzayos, Andoni Gaña, Milena Muriza, and John Sarasua. All of them are here to answer whatever questions you deem pertinent. So let's commence the questions, and therefore we are at your disposal. Well, to start off with, congratulations. I think it's a very good film, but above all, I think that we've all been quite moved, all of the audience. And to start off with, perhaps I would like to ask the director, Asier, how did it occur to you, seeing the prior moments to the championship? I think this is very important because it captures an historic moment which gives a lot of force and strength to the film. That is to say, the reality of the moment is quite important. So therefore, how did you address this beforehand? Before the championship? Well, good afternoon. The most important reason to make the film was that every time you go to a Bertolari's championship, you get very moved, and that's the reason I made the film. And as of there, the approach to the film, we addressed the film up until the present moment, a long way. We've gone a long way, but just as you said, in the championship of 2009, the finals, that was very important. And prior to the final, I was with Ananturiana and Mayale, and I started to talk to them about the fact that I would like to make a documentary vis-a-vis being a Bertolari. And up till then, I didn't know what I was going to find. I knew what being a Bertolari was, to sing verses, improvise verses. And before that final in the championship, I had the need to bring out the cameras, and I had the need to record what was going on. And I asked Andoni Gaña whether I could carry out some interviews and whether he was prepared for me to do so, and he said yes. And as of that moment, I got in depth, I got involved, and 2 years later, here we are. That championship final was historic, it was quite moving, it was quite beautiful, and I was quite fortunate to be there. Me and the whole team, the technical side of the team that was recording the whole session. So therefore, and after this, once the final was finished, when I was in the editing room, when I was going to edit everything, all the footage, I saw I had the sufficient material to make a film about this, and I thought that it was a very interesting subject. And many minor subject matters emerged which are very interesting as well, and I also perceived that it was a film that could be able to move the audience. The trailer was quite very important in order to seek financing for the film and to give more security to myself in order to convince myself that we could make a beautiful film. And as of that moment, the script and so on and so forth, well, I've been like a kind of manager, because at the end of the day, after the interviews to John, an enormous amount of ideas appeared vis-a-vis the question that I asked, and the interview with Mayalen as well. And with them, as I was interviewing them and knowing them better, the film started to emerge further and further, basically. And we started to write the script in the previous autumn because the important interviews were held in the previous summer. So therefore, in the month of March, with Miren, we worked upon the images, and there were another series of sequences, and from March until now, it was to shoot the film, to edit, to present this in the film festival, and here I am now. So therefore, everything has been a genuine pleasure, with the possibility that a documentary allows you. The story was open from the outset until we closed and finished everything in the editing room. And I think I've been I've been playing a game for a long time, and that's the situation. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy with the results. Congratulations to you and to the team, and those that are not here today. For me, it's very moving, because sometimes when you see it on TV, it seems as if it's very moving, but this is much closer. I have a couple of questions. You presented, 6 years ago, you presented a film, now you presented this documentary. Why so long? And those metaphors that have emerged have turned into images, the question of the abyss, the sea, and so on. How have you worked upon this? Going from fiction to a documentary, taking that leap, we can say that fiction has very interesting things, and so has documentaries. And now I'm working on documentaries, and the truth is, I've enjoyed very much filming this documentary, and just as I said, because the story was open all the way up until the present moment, so therefore that keeps you on the alert, and it keeps you quite awake to the situation. And I move very well in that code. I give a lot of importance to intuition. I believe in intuition. I'm very intuitive, and I work very intuitively, better said. And sometimes you go to the editing room and all of a sudden you see something and what you've recorded doesn't work. But in this case, my intuition has worked quite well. And in the editing room, I was quite surprised of the result that we've achieved. And what was the second question? I'm sorry. Oh, as regards what I did with Miren. Well, as I said before, of all of those interviews and of the Teifa texts, I more or less drafted a script, and therefore I called Miren because I thought that in the current Berzolarismo, in improvisation and versing, being a woman and being young conjugates very well, which is the image of the new type of Berzolaris, and improvised verse singers as an expressive image. And therefore I proposed to record those images with Miren, and she was very prepared to do so, and she was very pleasant. And she didn't run any risk or any danger in the abyss. There were all sorts of safety measures when we did this, by the way. And I know that when we addressed it, she said, well, I'm a Bersolari, I'm not an actress. But at the end of the day, she jumped in the deep end, and once she jumped in the deep end, everything flowed very easily. Do you have any date when it's going to be premiered here? In Arrasate in Mondragon on the 14th of October. And in Vergara at home. There's no cinema in Vergara, unfortunately. And now we're going to talk about the situation of cinema nowadays. Okay. No, not at all. We've 7 years. We've not 20 years ago there were 3, and 7 years ago the only one that was left was closed down, the movie theatre, and now there's a culture centre, but we can't hear the question now. I'm sorry, without the microphone. And the following question, Merche. Congratulations to Asier and to everyone. And to Miriam, we must say she's very young and she's very beautiful, by the way, just in case you wanted to know. You said you started with the championship, but then there was a process subsequent. In that process, did you ever think that you were not making this documentary only for Basque people, for the people that know what Bertoladiism is, but there may be some will to project it towards other people? Well, from the outset, as I was saying, what was clear in my mind was that this is to being a Bertoladi is like a small treasure. It's something that we have, and which is very interesting. I was talking to people from abroad, and nobody knew what it was about. So therefore, on that hand, I think from the outset there was the intention of trying to make it to a bigger audience that knew nothing about improvised verse singing or Bertoladism. And despite the fact that I wanted to make it to that extended audience, I want people from here to see it if the film was a good film, if we made a good film. And from the outset, that was my intention. And I'm not too sure, but you might say, you tell me. At least I believe even those people that don't know what being a Bertoladi can enjoy the film, and they're probably surprised at what they've seen on the screen. Next question. Well, you're saying it's a documentary. Well, I think that it's also got a bit of a plot. From the beginning of the story in the film all the way until they hug each other in the championship final, and we would have to, how was this idea generated? Well, from the beginning, as I was saying, in that championship, I said, well, okay, what am I going to do? Record the championship, or how am I going to use the camera? How am I going to place it? And I thought, that Andoni already had won 4 chapellas or 4 prizes, and he was under risk. It could be quite cinematographic that he lost the championship, or maybe he regained it. And then all of a sudden he was who could be the hero at the end of the day? And I addressed this from the beginning. So therefore I was going to follow Andoni, and all of a sudden something, maybe narratively something else might occur. So therefore I carried out the interview, and he said, I'd be happier if someone else, my friend of mine won, and he said, no, I don't believe that. That can't be true. This is something that someone always says who's won it 4 times in a row. But the truth is, there was no face-to-face, so the hero lost. Why? Well, because in all of the films, in every film, you need a hero who's fighting against his enemy, and he'll win or he'll lose, but the audience goes to watch this and to live it in situ. So therefore that didn't happen. He didn't win. And what is true is that while we were recording, I was quite involved in that world, what I wanted to do and so on and so forth. When Ahmet went on the face-to-face, I was a bit let down, and he said, oh, what an historical, how fortunate. And I said, well, this is great. We've not made it to the climax. And what happened? It was all edited, and in the editing room I realized that I didn't know too much about what it is to be an improvised verse singer in Basque at Bertolatti. So therefore, when I was doing the editing work in the editing room, when I heard what they were saying, I realized that more important than winning or losing was to promote this and to transmit what they do in the Basque language and other more important values than winning or losing. So therefore I realized that we could make a great film with this. So therefore that fallen hero was more revalued, so to speak, and made greater, so to speak, after having lost. Next question. I would like to ask the following question to Miren, and another one to Andoni. Miren, you're a Bertolatti, but you've had to play the role as an actress. How did you prepare this, or how did you feel during the shooting of the film? And to Andoni, I would like to ask you, this isn't such a deep question, by the way, what did you feel when you were given that magnetic, or to do verses on a magnetic resonance imaging? Well, the day that I was asked this, the first thing I said, I wasn't an actress, that I'm a Bertolatti, and I didn't know how I was going to feel to be an actress. And plus, it was in the water, it wasn't on a stage, it was in the abyss. It was quite impressive, quite overwhelming. And so, above all, I felt very privileged to be here next to all of my colleagues and to have participated in the film. So therefore, that team atmosphere and that confidence that was transmitted meant I had a really great time, and I'm very happy with the result. And as regards to the magnetic resonance imaging, nothing special, by the way, but I spent quite a lot of time there. You know what cinema's like. You get in, and by the time you leave, and you improvise, and you respond from within the magnetic resonance imaging machine, and so on and so forth. The most important thing is that I see it in myself with Maria, because I see it, thought, oh, this would be a good idea. So why don't we make some images, record some images, or shoot some images? And he was talking to the director, and while he was talking to the director, I said, well, let's work jointly, let's work together. And we said, okay, we've got the whole day free for this work. And I said, well, I'm a scientist, I spent 2 years to do this, but my idea was that the script, well, we need a scientist here, whatever. We need someone with an Einstein-like hair, a hairdo, a character. We need a version of this nature, or a character of this nature. And that's why I had a week, because I was going to start the editing work, and all of a sudden we got together, and that's a study which is underway now, by the way. And through the film, the possibility has occurred, we went there seeking something else. But it's a project which is underway. We'll see what comes of that. We'll know in a couple of years' time. Hi, in the film, there are certain old documents and black and white images. I'm not too sure whether you've not wanted to use these documents too much, or you've lacked more recordings or more testimony, former testimonies of Bertolattism in several decades. I'm not too sure. I have everything in my hands. I have seen everything of material. There's not too much material really, archive material, and I've used what was convenient at a given time. I think that through the editing process, it's been a long process. Initially, it was a 2-hour editing process in the editing room, and at the end of the day, we've shortened it and shortened it, and we've left what is the most essential part, because my intention was to make a film which was a bit more personal. The images of Salvador and that look, it's quite incredible. And I've used what exists. There's not too much material, the truth be said, in this kind of... Oyartzun irratia, your Bertolaris. I don't know. Perhaps to finish, why not do a verse, an improvised verse, a Bertolarismo? But at the end, what do you think? Well, as we're talking about being a Bertolari and improvised verse singing in Basque, and later on, I would like to know, this will mean that other places will know that this exists in the Basque Country. And as I said before, the main intention was more to see it abroad, and for those people that are non-Basque speakers from outside the Basque Country, vis-a-vis the rest of the world, to show a phenomenon which is Bertolarismo, the old as well as the new, and to show that it's alive. It's not only alive, but being so traditional, it is also very contemporary. I think that from the point of view of being a Bertolari, this is what this film is going to contribute, and for us it would be very important to allow people to learn about what it is at an international level, to what this means, and that's the most important thing for us. Another question. You've talked about Oteiza. Oteiza's work, to what extent has it conditioned the script? Well, Oteiza, I like him very much, and I've always followed him. And I believe, well, a lot of studies upon being a Bertolari work, and Oteiza talked a lot about being upon those studies. At the beginning of the script, there was more said about Oteiza, but at the end, we've limited ourselves to that sequence. That text at the end of the day has generated images. And those images, seeing them now, are very beautiful. But we had to record them. And these are very suggestive images, very powerful images, I believe. But I'm not too sure whether they'll work or not. But from the beginning, I felt like recording those sequences and those scenes in the film. And that's what I did. I want to thank you very much. For me, this is absolutely new. And this made me interested vis-a-vis the language, or the Basque language. What makes it possible to do it in the Basque language and not in Spanish? Does the language facilitate singing improvised Basque verses for those of that don't know the language or the Basque language? What can you say vis-a-vis this? The truth is, improvised singing, verse singing, it's a universal cultural aspect which in Spanish can have certain advantages as well in certain aspects. It happens in other cultures as well. Not only because Basque has any advantage from the outset at all. Next question, please. Congratulations for the fantastic work you've carried out. It's a genuine treasure to make this kind of improvised verse singing to be shown on the screen. And to the Bertolaris, after seeing the documentary, how do you see being a Bertolari now after seeing it on the screen? From the beginning, we saw this with an enormous amount of tension. Now, when we've seen the project on the screen, and in a place where word has so much weight, words have so much weight, it's very intensive. The film lasts for an hour and a half, and to enjoy it, well, your body needs that time to relax, and I'm not too sure whether I'm in the condition to really value the film in itself, but I'm that Asier ended up doing this kind of work, making the film itself. So it was a moment to think, it's so brief and so silent, and to show it in images. And in this case, in 90 minutes, it's an exercise which is very difficult to carry out. It's a very personal exercise that he's carrying out, making this film. And plus he's made an entire film, which is quite exciting. So therefore, on the one hand, the tension that he's placed upon himself, the director, that is to say, I said, and myself, before valuing the film that has arrived, what I would like to do is to thank the effort that the director has carried out, and the expert, and the great results that he's achieved in 10 or 15 or 20 seconds. It's to put into images what's happening in our mind at that time. We sometimes don't understand. Sometimes it's very difficult to explain how those things work in our hand, and the effort that you need and to put that into images, especially to explain those 10 seconds in an hour and a half. That's very, very difficult. So therefore there are a lot of key elements here, and to develop the story, the different links and how the story is linked, the survival, the will to survive, that impossible struggle, and to explain all of this is very difficult. What I value above all is that effort that he set forth in order to make something which is that very, very complex, and I think the result that it was achieved is very, very good. Question as regards to the verses, it was almost like a political weapon vis-a-vis Franco. To what extent has this been maintained? And that's my question. This ability to reflect with these verses the political reality, to what extent that critical force still exists? Well, we believe that we still have that critical force vis-a-vis any context and under any situation or any novelty. Nowadays, to be improvised verse singing, albeit there's been the Bars Championship and the final, nowadays 1,700 Bertolatti improvised verse singing is carried out per year. 1,700 a year. This means that there are 4 daily actions per day in the Basque Country. So therefore, as we improvise, the political and current situation in the Basque Country, we echo this with, I think that the Bertolatti, that's inside the Bertolatti, to be critique and critical, to be hypercritical in some of the cases in the Basque Country. Where did you film the outside shots, or the outdoor shots? I think it was from Navarre. In Aldats is where the stone quarry is, in Lecumberri. It's a beautiful stone quarry. I think it's been covered when we left. I think it was all covered up, so therefore that's there for history. It's recorded for history. The beach is in Zarauz, in Andoni's, where Andoni lives, and with Mayalan's interviews and in the Tabacalera in Donosti, it's where we did the improvised verses, and then actions from Iparralde, from the French part of the Basque Country, Rurepel, Pasaya, San Juan, Bilbao, Donosti, San Sebastian, all throughout the Basque Country. I had another question. Antagonist and protagonist, there are two characters within the film. The deeper thinking or the deeper thoughts I think that reflection is quite shared to a certain extent. We spoke for about 6 hours, and all of a sudden all types of things emerged. I've been out of this for many years, but I think in the last few decades, in improvised verse singing, they've self-reflected. We've talked about the meaning of what we do in this type of improvised verse singing, and I think that in the last 25 years, being a Bertolari, I think we've improvised this as well. To a certain extent, we can say that our generation has reinvented what improvised verse singing is. It's a path that we've guided ourselves or set forth ourselves. I think that all of the actors that carry out this type of improvised verse singing, there's been a strategy, a certain sort of solidarity and association there, and that along that path we've reflected upon many things, and at this moment I've had to say a few words, but it seems to me that these reflections are shared amongst all of us that carry out this type of art. Following Christian? Perhaps, sorry before, I cut you off before because it's very difficult for me to speak in Spanish, so Freddie, to a certain extent it is true. This is universal cultural manifestation, but in the Basque language, it has developed it in its own way. It's like the Basque handball playing in the Middle Ages, for example. It was played throughout Europe, and it's lost in the Basque country, takes it in and develops it in its own way. That the Basque handball, which is called the Basque handball game, but to a certain extent it's turned into a modern sport. Bertolariism is similar to this. That is to say, in the last centuries it's been maintained and developed unusually, but in the last 30 years the strategy is to develop it, to exist and to create in a mass culture, and that's perhaps the difference. It's not a linguistic difference, but it's more a social, linguistic, and cultural phenomenon. Good afternoon. I want to congratulate you as well, because you've given a new perspective of what it is to be a Bertolari and improvised verse singing and the history of sung verses, and you've demonstrated people that are closely linked to the Basque culture. But my question is, it has something to do with what Mayallens said and something else that John Sarasua said. Mayallens has said that sung verses links what is traditional and what is modern, and John Sarasua that it's being reinvented over the last few years. There's sung verses. What do you, that reinvention, has that been necessary, do you believe, so that sung verses and Bertolarismo could form part of our culture or not? What do you think about this? I think that undoubtedly, I'm sure that the idea is to invent and reinvent yourself, and cultures have had to do this. I'm not too sure whether reinventing, but at least a version or to update what you do. What I mean by this is that we don't start from zero. We're not starting from zero. And I think that our greatest treasure, and that strategy, the most important thing of this is to be faithful to one's tradition and to receive it as our own heritage and use it as a tool using our tradition and to dare to make something new and to be able to do it at the end of the day. So therefore I believe that that's one of the keys to the quote-unquote success of sung verses or Bertoladiism. Bertoladi's like amateur Bertoladi's or sung verse singers has had a perspective which is quite audacious, and also the Bertoladi is an author and is an artist, and also, and as I said before, due to our survival instinct that we have nothing, quote unquote, and so therefore the only thing that we have left is to run the risk at the end of the day. It's difficult to be smaller than what we are, so therefore we've practically got nothing to lose, quote unquote, so therefore that courage has given us more life and to be contemporary with any type of other activity without any complexes. We're not comparing ourselves with any others. We continue to open our path as we go, and in that renewal process, in turn, what takes place, what we do is we follow the tradition, to be faithful to our tradition, to our past, and also, or as well as this, the common work carried out between sung verse singers from many different ages in San Sebastián, Aguirre, all of these, we're from different ages, but we coincide in the square when we perform, and we coincide in the old traditions and the new traditions as well. So, and I think this is one of our greatest treasures. Sorry, good afternoon. How does the beautiful and illustrative scene of the master telling a fable to the younger boy or younger person? I listened to these guys for the last 15-18 years. The Bertoladis, the Association of Bertoladis of the Basque Country, we had a project of getting to know different ways of improvising in the different cultures of the world. And we do make a relationship with that type of improvisers of those cultures. And about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, I met myself and another two colleagues, women colleagues as well. We went to Calabria to a session upon words and signs. And it had to do with improvisation, and we met, amongst many others, a university professor who taught in the United States. And he was the one that told us about that legend. And so Ahmed's told Asir, and that's how it emerged in the film. From Calabria going to the United States and ending up here, and this professor on the past. Last question, please. Simple question. As I've not heard too many verses and I've not heard too much improvised verse singing, do you do it in Basque, Batua, or the Vizcaínos in Basque? Do you mix it all up, or how does that work? I don't know how to ask this. How does this work? Well, we normally say the first Batua Basque language, which is a fusion of all the Basque languages, before 1968, with Ucal Sandia in Aranzazu, was invented by the Bertoladis. And it's the simple reason the Bertoladi has to sing before an audience. And he has to understand, and the audience has to understand, if he goes to Gipuzkoa, if a Gipuzkoan goes to Guernica, he will speak in Gipuzkoan, not enclosed Gipuzkoan, but he will try to include something from Guernica or Vizcaya. And if a person from Guernica comes to Abisqueta, he is not going to speak completely in the Guernica type Basque, because the idea is to communicate. So therefore it goes to the common, and Batua Basque, which is the common Basque language amongst them all. The Batua oral language is, I would like to add something else, however, having said that. As I'm from the French Basque area, Salvador was mentioned quite a lot. We're not talking about a place where different periods of Bertolaris get together, but it's also different dialects get together in the Basque country, despite the fact that what we do is to adapt ourselves to the Basque of where we're singing our improvised verses. Dona Tzabala, in Andaya, in Erdani, in Saroth, we have a lot of origins. We come from different places. And when we get on stage, there's a cross of all of those dialects mixed together, and this also exists in our improvised song verse. Thank you very much to all of you, and congratulations. Thank you very much to all of you.